Welcome back to AWANI, still on Belanjawan 2025, where it is set to be unveiled on October 18, 2024, aims to drive sustainable economic reforms and improve governance in Malaysia. And the country's economy has shown robust growth, with GDP rising from 2.9% in fourth quarter 2023 to 5.9% in the second quarter 2024. And the Fiscal Responsibility Act is the key part of this strategy, focusing on reducing financial leakage and enhancing economic resilience. And key initiatives include expanding renewable energy programs, increasing digital grants for SMEs, and significant infrastructure development projects. And the future outlook remains positive, with continued emphasis on sustainable growth and social welfare improvements under the Economy Madani framework. So to discuss further on this, we have Dr. Rosnani Rasul joining me on the line, the Chief Executive Officer, BIMB Securities Sdn Bhd. Doctor, firstly, how do you see the budget 2025 accelerating the post-pandemic economic growth agenda? And in the context of global economic uncertainty, what key steps should the government take to ensure the resilience of Malaysia's stock market?
Salam Nabila, salam Madani dari kami BIMB Securities, anak syarikat milik penuh Bank Islam. Talking about budget 2035, which is coming very fast, I think it's going to be taking on the 18th of October, which is I think tomorrow, lusa. So how do we see the budget 2035 accelerating the post-pandemic economic agenda? Now, first off, we think that it's very imperative for the government to keep the engine of growth strong. We need to ensure that private consumption remain resilient. We just had a very good news that our unemployment rate has dropped further to 3.2%. In August, that is full employment for Malaysia. Congratulations to the country. And then wage growth and of course civil servant. Additional than that, we need to ensure that aggregate investment remain robust. You just, Nabila, mentioned about PFFRA 2023, where the target is for DEBEX development expenditure to be at least 3% of GDP. We saw last year that the government announced a 90 billion development expenditure. This year, we're not surprised that it could reach the same amount or slightly lower. Nonetheless, it will remain very strong for the government. We think that the government will continue to pump the economy through pump priming. We shall see the expenditure on railways, highways, data center, flood mitigation, and we also would like to see certain measures to help or to assist to push further the manufacturing sector with the advent of 5G, AI, big data consumption, and also, of course, mining, the start of oil production that also power the economy, among others, the beginning production, oil production on oil field like Kasawari, Ganza, Jerun oil field, apart from higher output from existing fields. Now, we have actually learned from the news flow that the government is quite optimistic that the GDP this year is going to be slightly higher compared to the expectation 4 to 5%. We think we are on the same page on that. The first quarter GDP is about 4.2%. The second quarter about 5% on average is slightly above the government target of 4 to 5%, and we think that the government could surprise on the upside, given that the planning will be aligned according to NETR and IMP 2030 as a second reading for the 12 MP. And of course, we are at the corner of 13 MP, 13 Malaysian plan that will be revealed in 2026 to 2030 that will power us to become a high-income nation. So all in all, among others, that the highlight of the budget is actually for the salary hike for the civil servant. As we know, that they represent about 10% of total employment. So we think that with all the private consumption firing and also aggregate investment is accelerating, services sector of course we think that will remain one of our engine of growth. We know that tourism sector is expected to receive more than 27 million tourists this year, and then that to power us into Visit Malaysia year 2026-2027. We think that Malaysian engine of growth will be firing. We hope to see that to be above 5%. We are not surprised. That is nonetheless, even if we reach more than 5%, that is within our potential, and we think that the prospect is very bright for the country in this year and of course in 2026 and onwards.
Doctor, despite all this positive trajectory and the robust growth of our economic development, one of the main themes of Budget 2025 is controlling inflation and at the same time the cost of living. So in your opinion, what challenges might the government face in achieving these goals? And from an investor's perspective, are measures such as subsidies and also tax incentives are actually sufficient to maintain market confidence, Doctor?
One of the biggest basket in the inflation consumer in the consumer price basket is fuel costs and of course food. Yeah, so food represent I think about 30% of the basket. Fuel I think is about close to 15%. So we are actually a net importer of food, and we are also a net importer of petroleum, although we are net exporter when you combine natural gas and petroleum. So all these are actually not within our control because it depends on the fluctuation of the global commodity prices. So in order to control the inflation from rising or accelerating, we think that the government may need to subsidize certain volatile price items, yeah, just to maintain inflation within the acceptable range. However, we think that the government is moving toward targeted subsidy, because when you do targeted subsidy, then we can ensure that only the deserved few get the subsidy from the government. I think that is the economy madani. That is what the government is heading to, in order, of course, to control inflation, one, and also to ensure that the government coffers is actually channeled to those that actually deserve, and also, of course, to control our fiscal deficit. So that's very important. So on that score, we think that the government is actually reforming the economy to ensure that it is sustainable. So for the stock market, for the investors' point of view, if the government is actually proceeding with this economic reform, fiscal reform, I think investor will look at Malaysia favorably, as it is that we are seeing a very huge capital inflow into the bond market, equity market, and also FDI. And to answer to that, Nabila, I think the government is doing the right thing to ensure that subsidy is given to the deserved few. And I think the budget 2025 will reveal even more, because withdrawing the subsidy will have to be done phase by phase. It cannot be at one go, because we need to ensure that it will not be any disruption to the economy.
Doctor, it is expected to have a more radical and also more different kind of policy and also formations for budget 2025. So how does BIMB Securities actually plan to capitalize on the economic transformation that will be tabled by Ekonomi Madani, Kerajaan Madani, and how do you plan to outline in budget 2025, and which sectors or industry do you foresee benefiting the most from this budget, and how will this influence your investment strategies in the long term?
I think the government has been very transparent, and the direction is very clear. We think that the fiscal policy in budget 2025 will include the policy directions set by NIMP 2030, NETR, PIKAS 2030, and economic Madani narratives. Under these plans, we view technology sector to benefit from NIMP 2030 as the aspiration to move up the value chain of semiconductor towards IC design and wafer fabrication. Automotive sector is expected to gain from local EV development and supporting industries like EV batteries, EV battery charging ports. Oil and gas sector is likely to benefit from the exploration of carbon capture, utilization, storage. As for NTER, we expect RE and solar players to enjoy the incentive and action plan set by the government. For PIKAS 2020, this will set the stage for the construction players to be busy at least for the next decade. So I think the government is covering all angles, ensuring that Malaysia is actually reaching its potential, rightfully so, as we move towards the high income nation, which the government is expect to achieve by 2027 or 2028.
Okay, Doctor, we have about 1 minute plus left. Perhaps some hopes and aspirations for budget 2025. 2 days left.
The hope is that the government is able to set the bar higher for the GDP growth of 5 to 6% is something that Malaysians have been waiting for. We think that is achievable. It's not something that we have not achieved before. I think we have achieved over 6% GDP growth before after we did economic transformation, the government transformation in 2010. I think is actually it's right for us to actually continue to surprise investors on the upside. I think Malaysia is able to generate or produce GDP growth above the regional peers like Indonesia or even Philippines. Even though Philippines is a lot more higher at 5.8% to 6%, but we think that our GDP growth can beat even those of Indonesia. Nabila?
All right, thank you so much to Dr. Rosnani Rossel, Chief Executive Officer BIMB Securities Senior Berhad, for your sharing and insight. And all of our discussion can be found on Astro.com and all of our social media platforms.